of the market. The current model of healthcare is that of a system dominated by the private sector with differential access mechanism, thereby dismantling its universalistic, egalitarian, and cost-effective character. In fact, the health issue in India have never required priority and primacy either in public discourse or in public deliberation and governance. Its planning and development, apart from being influenced by the class character of ruling class, also bears an imprint of external forces. Experts of indigenous health system were ignored, thus they failed to take into account the historically rooted social and economic inequalities across social groups. Virtual neglect of rural health, both in terms of services and infrastructure. All these finally culminated in the conceptualization of health as a technical issue rather than a social one with its own ramification. The crisis in the health system reflects the inadequacy of the institutional democracy to the lives of the people and thus the crisis of politics, which underlines it and provides support to anti-people policies. As a result of all these, Indian state has successfully narrowed down the concept of promoting good health and well-being of the people to just providing health care as the social goal of health policy. Thank you, sir. Is it over? Yeah, any questions?
Yeah, I think it's a, it's a very interesting presentation. Maybe next, Dr. Sajad Badu, maybe if you can please present.
Thank you, sir. Next, I would like to call Dr. Oli Mishra, Assistant Professor in Area of Marketing, Geetam Institute of Management. Her topic is factors influencing sustainable resilience in social enterprise during adversity. She will be presenting online.
Okay.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible? Thank you. Yes, I am Dr. Oli Mishra from Geetam Institute of Management, Geetam University, Visakhapatnam. I will be presenting on sustainable resilience. I'm trying to share my screen just with me, sir. Yeah, yeah. Is my screen visible? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I'll be talking about my research paper on the factors influencing sustainable resilience in social enterprises, especially in times of a pandemic or an adversity. So we are talking about resilience a lot these days, especially in times of the crisis, because resilience has helped many organizations come up strongly. And yeah, could I request you to mute? Okay, so resilience, the term is resilience means it is the capacity of a system or an individual to deal with the change and to continue to develop. Now, this term has been combined with sustainability in my research paper. So, we know sustainability as the ability to meet the needs of the present without compromising with the needs of the future. A lot of research has been done in both of these topics of resilience and sustainability, but they have been looked as independent concepts. And I propose that we can look into this in as one concept together, sustainable resilience as one concept together. So, what does sustainable resilience imply? As you see in the diagram here, it is like a complete system, wherein on one side we have resilience, which means the capacity to absorb, recover, strengthen, and adapt in the face of disturbances. And the other side, we have sustainability, which means the capacity to preserve and strengthen the system over time. Now, resilience helps an organization to overcome a negative situation. And in my study, I have taken the concept of sustainable resilience for social entrepreneurs. So, as we know, social entrepreneurs are people who are working to solve a problem of the society, and profit is not their main motive. Their main motive is to help the society solve the problem. Now, in such organizations, they already face a lot of problems in terms of resources like money and other raw materials, even labor. So, since they are used to facing such kind of problems, they have an inbuilt resilience in them. In the face of an adversity or a crisis like the pandemic, which we are still going through, uh, in such a situation, such social entrepreneurs they have exhibited their resilience, and they have modified the resilience by making it sustainable for a longer time. So that is where the idea of this research comes from. Resilience is if an organization or if a social enterprise does not have resilience, it is more vulnerable in nature and it can slowly lose itself in the struggle among the different social enterprises. But with sustainable resilience, they will be able to continue their journey and solve more problems in society. So, the proposal of this paper is to have the concept of sustainable resilience, which has been seen in some social enterprises. To do this, I have conducted a literature review of the factors that influence sustainable resilience. So I've identified these factors. They're individual resilience, flexibility, collaboration, risk management culture, built-in process integration, and business resilience. And under each factor, from the previous literature, I could identify certain sub-factors which explain that particular factor. For example, if you take the first factor, that's individual resilience. Here, some factors like connection, confidence, competence, commitment, and control. Here, individual resilience means the entrepreneur's own resilience to face a crisis. Then, second is flexibility, which can be explained through the agility, the speed, and the training that they're giving to their employees. Collaboration here refers to the communication among the different social enterprises, among different communities, and how they cooperate with each other while enabling technology. Then risk management culture, which includes strategy development, risk and revenue sharing to the social capital. Similarly, built-in process integration. So how do they redesign their supply chain? How do they configure the resources that they are going to use? And finally, the resilience of the business on the whole. So to do the study, I have conducted case-based research, wherein I have connected with some Indian social enterprises, especially some women entrepreneurs, women social entrepreneurs, who have been working for the benefit of the rural and the unprivileged women. And I have conducted interviews with them to identify how did they face this pandemic. Because to run a social enterprise during a crisis is not easy. How did they do it? So in this context, I have taken the interview for the team of 10 social enterprises, and I tried to identify whether these factors, which I could identify in my literature review, whether they were relevant in their case also or not. So an interview with the team members of the social enterprises was conducted, and also with the main social entrepreneur was conducted. So what I found out was for each of these main factors that I had identified from the literature, we could find relevant work done by the social entrepreneurs in that particular factor. For example, when I asked them about individual resilience, each of these social entrepreneurs were confident about how they would handle the situation. They looked at this adversity like an opportunity. They did not fear that they are going to lose in this negative situation. In fact, they had the positive mindset that we are going to overcome this particular. Another factor which I identified was flexibility, which was there in literature as well. Here, flexibility was shown in the speed with which these social entrepreneurs were taking up decisions. They were quickly connecting with their women entrepreneurial group and they were repurposing their businesses. So I can take the example of one particular social entrepreneur. Her name is Prachi Kaushik and the social enterprise is Blumini. They normally deal with the menstrual hygiene of women in rural areas because there's not much awareness about such things in rural areas and it's not spoken about. Uh, Such social entrepreneurs continue creating the awareness about menstrual hygiene at the same time they could take up the decisions very quickly and provide them the right kind of drainage so that the repurposing of business could be done very quickly. So they were actually making timely napkins. From there, they started making PPE kits, masks, and other COVID-19 related items. So that was the kind of flexibility that they have got. Third is collaboration, wherein all these social entrepreneurs they connected very quickly with other social entrepreneurs. So instead of competition among themselves, a lot of cooperation was seen, which helped all of them to succeed and move towards a positive situation. So they communicated with their team members, they made use of technology like smartphones and use of video calls for a better cooperation. Risk management culture, they used the social capital and created a very robust strategy so that they could handle the crisis. And then they had a built-in process integration. So there was a supply chain which they were already following in their enterprise. They had to modify that a little more because a lockdown was in place. So how could I understood that they had like parallel people who were carrying out the same supply chain activities. They were not the main design people who were designed for that activity, but then others were doing their activities for them. So there was a redesign of supply. And finally, business resilience, which shows that all the previous knowledge that they had about their business, they could use that for a different situation to overcome that. So finally, the findings of the study for long-term prosperity, sustainable resilience is only the way forward. It will not just create a very healthy environment for the society, but it will also help society and the future generations to prosper as well. So this concept of sustainable resilience is something that mm, has been implemented by the social entrepreneurs already, and it can be taken as an example by other organizations, and they can also implement it. Because we speak of sustainability and resilience in a very common manner, but the two terms, the two concepts together, they make a lot more sense. So in future, there can be other studies which can try to understand both the concepts as one core concept and how it can be implemented so that we can provide innovative solutions, not just to society, but also to the business world in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Misra. It was a very interesting presentation. I think we should probably listen to Dr. Sajjad. He has been waiting for some time. Dr. Sajjad, if you are there, please.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, why don't you please make the presentation?
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
क्या करना है एंटायर स्क्रीन पे क्या ये शेयर एंटायर आ ही रहा है प्रेजेंटेशन यहाँ पे शेयर करो उसके बाद प्रेजेंटेशन तो खोल के हेलो सर
Yes, please make it full screen so it will be good.
Is it fine now, sir?
Yeah, please go ahead. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Sajjad, a PhD research scholar at Department NIT Srinagar, at the Department of Humanities NIT Srinagar. So I will be presenting my paper on political determinants of federal transfers and their impact on the growth of public health expenditure, empirical evidence from the Indian states. And this paper is co-authored by two other people. One is my friend Dr. Amir Ahmed Dahar. He's an assistant professor at IUST Avantipura, and the third author is Dr. N. Anuradha. She is an associate professor at GITM University. So this is the abstract. The first slide is about abstract. Under the federal arrangement, states are not provided with adequate financial powers to meet their expenditure obligations. So to bridge the gap of these financial requirements, central governments use the channel of loans and intergovernmental transfers. Basically, as far as our federal system is concerned, we know that in India we have a quasi-federal system. That is, the state has been deliberately made strong in terms of so many functions. So there is always some imbalances in terms of the revenue collection, in terms of the resources at the state level, and those imbalances are called simply, if we will call them as horizontal imbalance and the vertical imbalance. So to bridge the gap of these financial requirements, central government always transfer funds to states on based on certain criteria. So a moot question that arises here is, what determines these transfers? What are the factors that determine these transfers from central government to the state governments? And how political factors affect the welfare expenditure of the states, like health expenditure? So we are doing in this paper, we are observing in this paper, what we are observing in this paper is that what are main political determinants that affect the central funding towards states, because there are so many determinants of federal transfers. They are social determinants, economic determinants, demographic determinants. But in few studies, it has been shown how political transfers. So using aims at identifying some political factors that significantly affect the course of federal transfers in India. Also, as intergovernmental transfers may have a positive or negative impact on growth of public health expenditure of states, the study also examines such an impact with due concern for political factors. So to carry out the empirical exercise, we will use data of 14 major Indian states. So we are using the data for 14 major Indian states for the period of 30 years and employ panel regression techniques to estimate the model. There are certain studies that have been already conducted so far as the political determinants or some other determinants of federal transfers are concerned, like the constitutional assignment of expenditure responsibilities and revenue authority between the central and state governments in India is intentionally imbalanced to give central government a role in regional redistribution. This is what I was actually clearing earlier, that the nature of our federal system is like that state central has been given an upper edge in the resource generation, in the resource collection, and in the resource distribution. So this has been deliberately done. Then after, what states central government do, it does transfer grants or tax shares to the states to bridge this imbalance. And this study has been conducted by Khemani. The impact of intergovernmental transfers on physical behavior of states was earlier theoretically discussed by Lakadwala, Chanda, and Bargawa. The impact of India's federal architecture, particularly its tax sharing structure and system of fiscal transfers on the state of country's health care, was studied by Niranjan Sahu in 2015. So, in the Indian perspective, this study shows how the tax sharing structure or the federal structure has an impact on the transfers that are particularly for the public health expenditure. As far as the political determinants are concerned, in Indian context, we don't have a comprehensive study to empirically verify the role of potential political factors on intergovernmental transfers. So far, to the best of my knowledge, there has been many studies which have shown the determinants in terms of social determinants, economic and demographic determinants of federal transfers and their impact on the growth of public health expenditure. But few studies, or I can say there is literature is very scant as far as the political determinants are concerned. Also, literature is scant of the studies discussing the role of political factors with special reference to political and fiscal institutions as prevailing in India. Having detailed the need for present study as above, there is a good scope to identify the potential political factors that affect the transfer mechanism of intergovernmental transfers and ultimately causes public health expenditure to either grow or decline. So this slide talks about the identification of research problem, keeping in view the gaps pointed out in the existing literature, like the political factors or qualitative in nature. So we know that there is a challenge in the measurement of any qualitative variable. As far as the quantitative variable is concerned, the tools and techniques we have very large amount of those methodologies that work on the quantitative variables, but there are very less techniques, or I can say it is very difficult for any researcher. Always he confronts very more problems as far as the measurement of qualitative variable is concerned. So similarly, mainly all the political factors, they are qualitative in nature, so their measurement will be a challenge in this paper. Also, literature is sequent of the studies discussing role of political factors with special reference to political and fiscal institutions. In a few studies available, only selected transfers have been chosen, and not many political variables have been considered along with economic and demographic factors. We find adequate justification for making an attempt to measure indirectly the qualitative political factors that might affect the devolution decisions, and empirically verify whether such factors have significant impact on public health expenditure. Role of such factors in allocation of shares to constituent states also demands empirical attention, and same is attempted in this study. This will surely help us in inferring whether political strength or weakness of a constituent unit contribute to long-run financial stability of a state and its dependence on central transfers for financial health care. So these are the broader objectives of the study. The general aim of the study is to analyze the current center-state fiscal relationship with emphasis on political factors. So I have already discussed this, where we are focusing on how the center-state fiscal relationship affects the public health expenditure through various political factors. So the first objective is to empirically verify whether political participation has a significant impact on the allocation of central transfers. Second objective is to examine the differential impact of political factors on transfers to a constitutional body, finance commission, and non-constitutional transfers. We know that there are so many commissions through which central government transfers funds to states. So, as far as now planning commission is concerned, it has been abrogated in 2015. Now, mostly the funds are being allocated through the finance commission. The third objective is to empirically verify the impact of federal transfers influenced by potential political factors on the growth of public health expenditure. And the fourth one is to assess the impact on fiscal space and flexibility of states towards health outlays as a result of implementation of 14th Finance Commission recommendation. The fourth objective has been incorporated in the study, taking into consideration the very important thing that is about the 14th Finance Commission's recommendation about the increasing tax devolution, because 14th Finance Commission, it has changed the tax sharing from 32% to 42%. So we would like to assess what are its impacts. Now states are being given more revenues, whether those revenues are being whether those states are being now given also increased the expenditure on health, because we know that in India, as far as the public health expenditure is concerned, the central government spends very less on these on public health expenditure. So this objective assesses that impact after the recommendation of 14th Finance Commission. Research questions or hypotheses. Against the backdrop of the previous discussion, the study will answer the following research questions: to identify political factors in context of Indian political and fiscal system and empirically examine whether they have a significant role in determining the allocation share of different subnational governments. To empirically examine whether transfers from center affects the growth of public health expenditure with due weightage to political factors and nature of channel through which funds are transferred. And these are two hypotheses that I have formulated. There is no significant difference between election year and fiscal transfers, because we know that as far as this political consideration is taken, politicians, they always play some bad politics, or what we call as pork barrel politics. During the election years, they will enormously increase funds towards the states where they are having chances to win the election, or they are having to attract the voters. So they may increase the funds as far as the public health expenditure is concerned. So they may increase the funds towards the state where they have the where they are having the elections to conduct in their current year. So similarly, their second hypothesis is there is no significant difference between fiscal transfers and growth of public health expenditure in states. So this is the methodology that I will be using in this paper. Rather, I would say we will be using this paper because along with me, there are two other people who are co-authoring this paper. Since we will be using data of 14 states over the period of time, we will be having cross-sectional time series data. It will be apt to use panel regression analysis. Mostly for panel data, we use the panel regression analysis. And the main advantage with having panel data is that it allows us to test and relax the assumptions that are implicit in cross-sectional analysis. Different panel data model specifications involving different variables at a time will be used to test the significance of different political variables on federal transfers and also the impact of such transfers on the growth of public health expenditure in Indian states will be assessed using same methodology. And these are certain some data sources. Public finance statistics published by Ministry of Finance. Similarly, we have another source, annual and occasional state finance reports, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. So there are so many sources that we will be using while collecting the data. Innovation, path-breaking aspect of the research. The present study continues along this line of research but differs from previous studies mainly in three ways. So there have been, as far as I cleared it already, that there are very few studies that take into consideration the political factors that affect the public health expenditure. No doubt there are so many studies that incorporated social determinants, economic determinants, or demographic, but very few studies have incorporated political factors. So, how my study or how our study is different from those studies, I will list out the points. First, while many studies give evidence of the determinants of health expenditure at cross-country level, there is little systematic evidence available at the sub-national level. So, there are many studies that are doing research at the cross-country level, but there is very little evidence available about the sub-national level research on this topic. Our study takes advantage of this and empirically examines the determinants of health expenditure by considering India as a case where sub-national level, state level information are taken as sample units. So our study is a national study on Indian states. So our states will be the sampling units. Second, many previous studies have largely focused on examining the discrepancy in health expenditure due to country's income. So there are studies that have taken GDP, these are the factors, economic factors, into consideration while analyzing the impact on public health expenditure. But how do state level political factors influence health expenditure via federal transfers have rarely been studied so far. This study attempts to explain to what extent political factors have influenced growth and variation in public health expenditure in Indian states. Third, as reflected in Abuja Declaration 2000, the government's desire to increase spending on health highly depends on financial resources available with them. I already cleared this, mentioned at this point that in India, the very less percentage of GDP is being spent on public health expenditure. So this declaration was all about this, that every government should increase its spending on their public health. Obviously, that government will increase its spending on the public health expenditure who has having the financial resource available with them. Low resource availability or any fiscal stringency can sum in other way of fulfilling the obligations commitments towards the expenditure on welfare activities. In order to understand the political economy of budget allocation for health sector, one has to put this phenomena to empirical testing since it has already been studied so far discussed in methodology section. New data to be generated. Data available is not in ready to use form. We know that whenever we take data from many sources, it's not always, it is always in a rough form. So we have to make certain adjustments. Necessary adjustments to remove inflationary effects have been made in case of physical variables. So we have taken just the real variables. Compound annual growth rate methods was made use of in case of demographic variables, and different procedures were used to construct proxy and dummy variables for political variables which are qualitative in nature. So there have been use of many procedures through by which we have constructed proxy and dummy variables for political variables. Further necessary adjustments were made in all the variables as demanded during the analysis. Methods of interpolation and extrapolation will be used for getting the data, because data for some variables is not available for whole period of the study, because there are certain variables uh, of which we don't have the complete data for the 30 years. So there are always some misobservations. We use always interpolation or what we call as extrapolation in contribution of the study. The study will guide towards better design of federal transfers by empirically showing that the transfers through constitutional body, finance commission are less prone to political maneuvering compared to transfers
Dr.
through other.
Sajad, if you don't mind, would you please go towards your own findings, because uh, this matrix
Actually, sir,
is not right.
yet we are working on
Okay,
this paper, so we have not yet
okay,
done the analysis
okay,
part.
okay. So you have not done any empirical analysis.
Yet, yeah,
So
yes,
this is
yes,
just a
we have not
proposal.
done any.
Oh, okay, okay. This is just a proposal.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Okay. You may please.
Shall I continue, sir?
Yeah, yeah, please.
So this is the expected contribution of the study. Uh, by studying these things like political factors and their effect on the public health expenditure, our study will guide towards a better design of federal transfers by empirically showing that the transfers to constitutional body like finance commission are less prone to political factors or maneuvering compared to transfers to the other channels. Because I have already mentioned that the central government transfers funds through many channels, and our study will empirically show that it will show that the transfers to finance commission, they are less prone to political factors. That means they are less affected by the political factors, so it can be a better channel to transfer funds to states. Hence abrogation of planning commission was a right decision, and further strengthening of the constitutional scheme of fiscal transfers to finance commission will reduce the scope of other forms of devolution which leads to complaints from states. Before the abrogation of finance commission, what was happening there, that the same state was getting funds for the same purpose by via two channels. Balani commission was also transferring funds, and public finance commission was also transferring funds. So there always was a chance of overlapping of the funds. The discretionary transfers are being increasingly used for playing pork barrel politics, especially during election years, will be shown in the study. So there are certain transfers that we call in public finance as discretionary transfers. So it is at the discretion of central government. Whenever they think that they should transfer some funds to states, they can do it at their discretion. But mostly, what happens, these discretionary transfers are being used for playing pork barrel politics. So what I mentioned as far as my presentation is concerned during the initial slides, that politicians play pork barrel politics. What does it mean? That during election years, for their motive, which is always to gain the maximum voters, to attract the voters, they transfer the funds towards the states, not for any constructive purpose, not for any productive purpose, just without caring what will these funds will do, whether they will be spent for any welfare activities or not. They just transfer the funds just to gain their votes. The health specific transfers by federal government to sub-national governments is progressive or substitutive. That is, whether the states use the federal transfer for financing health or substitute it for some other health, for some other expenditure, will be part of this study to throw light on this. Because central government sometimes they transfer funds hoping that when these funds will be transferred to states for some specific purpose, whether for example they transfer funds to states hoping that now states will increase their own funds for the health expenditure, but states can substitute these funds for some other work. So this will be also the part of the study. Healthcare is one of the important pillars of human development that needs to be properly reflected well in research studies in order to make policy for designing health oriented policies. And this study will be going to benefit the society by displaying the proper mechanism of fund allocation towards healthcare center. Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sajad. I think we sort of move to the next presentation. I guess it will be by Professor Chobe. Is that correct?
Yes, Professor, you are right.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, please.
Mr. Chairman, the local chairperson and the convener, and honorable delegates, I am not an economist, nor I was ready for speaking here. Convener told me. Physically, I am not that way strong at the moment. I had written a paper, a note, and sent the chairman for his comment. And he said that it is a new perspective for political economy. Why don't you include it? So I put it in this paper. Now I am caught by my own mistake. So the title of the paper is uh, the title of the paper is Correlates of Capitalization. That is the title. And rather than speaking, I will read it out slowly. Process of capitalization began with the formation of British Raj in 1757 and continued growing rapidly even after India's independence on August 15, 1947. It acquired varied forms, often described as colonial, uh, neo-colonial, national, oblique domestic, local and global, liberal, neoliberal during its long march. It has been marching much faster since 1991 and today has reached its zenith. Today its speed is supersonic and beyond mental comprehension of the scientists as well as the common people of India. Question to ponder is, what are the major forms of capitalization? To be precise, what are the correlates of capitalization? Answer to it is not easy. Even great economists do not seem to be able to answer it in any simplest possible terms or any form of mathematical equations. Beauty of capitalization lies in its power to acquire multiple or infinite forms and color and enter minds of men and women, family and community and society secretly and unnoticed. Its divine or godly character are often described like in Hindi, हरि अनंत हरि कथा अनंता जाकी रहे भावना जैसी हरि में उधर देखी तिन तैसी माया महा ठगिनी हम जानी जस जस सुरसा बदन बढ़ावा तास कपि द्विज रूप दिखावा भूत पिशाच निकट नहीं आवे जब जब नाम हनुमान सुनावे देवा अपि गायन्ति सर्वे गुणा कांचनम आश्रयन्ति. Though capitalization appears gender free, yet it is described as goddess. Lakshmi, perhaps, goddess Lakshmi, perhaps because of its beauty and charm. A story of capitalization after August 15, 1947, in Democratic Republic of India is quite interesting. First, it wrapped itself with a new constitution prepared by the Constituent Assembly, constituted by the Queen of England, declared as we the people, etc., as the new sovereigns of Democratic Republic of India, enjoying equality, freedom, and fraternity. Jamindari and untouchability were abolished while promising people of India that rich shall not become richer and poor shall not become poorer in the Democratic Republic of India. Path of mixed economic development, within bracket capitalist mixed with socialist, was chosen and 5-year plan was launched on April 1, 1951 with a great fanfare. Socialistic pattern of society rooted in the philosophy of Sarvodaya was sought to be built through 5-year plans. 11 5-year plans were implemented. The 12th 5-year plan was stopped abruptly, and later Planning Commission, the torchbearer of Sarvodaya, was replaced by National Institute of Transformation of India, euphemistically called Niti Ayog. Nudge theory became the guiding philosophy of NITI. Question arises: what was the result of 11 5-year plan? Second, what is the effect of NITI? One major result of 11 5-year plan development of India was emergence of capitalism with its naked face of neoliberalization, accelerating process of enrichment of the few and empowerment of the majority. Second major effect was disappearance of socialistic pattern of society rooted in the principle of Sarvodaya in the air. Process of brain drain, unemployment, under and malnutrition, hunger, disease, communal hatred and violence increased manifold. Criminalization of politics became markedly visible. Alienation of political parties and political leadership from people, society, and nature grew beyond imagination. Uh, Breakdown of democratic politics gave rise to Ayaram, Gayaram politics on the one hand, and a new movement for total revolution on the other. Killing of peasants of Naxalbari village by CPIM government in collusion with the Indian National Congress Party led by Indira Gandhi government spread like wildfire all over India. A new word called Naxalite emerged from Naxalbari village to describe all those who demanded or who shall demand justice as per democratic principle as criminals and anti-national. Today, its new avatar is called Urban Nakshals to describe all those who demand equality, freedom, fraternity, human rights, and social justice. Emergency restricting the emergency restricting democratic freedom was imposed. Sim- Situation did not improve even after lifting the emergency and formation of Janata Party government. Return of Mrs. Indira Gandhi led government could not stop the process of capitalization accompanied by tornado or tsunami like violent social chaos and social violence. New charming, new charming forms of capitalization through privatization, liberalization, globalization, कर लो दुनिया मुट्ठी में, and Tata Namak, Desh Ka Namak, appeared on the social horizon of Democratic Republic of India. Newer forms of capitalization such as export-import liberalization, special economic zone, and computerization of India appeared by the beginning of 1984. Finally, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, the then Prime Minister of India, was assassinated for her refusal to computerization of Indian railways. Bhopal gas tragedy created by Union Carbide, causing death of thousands of workers and untold suffering to thousands of families in December 1984. Political turmoil took over central stage. Rajiv Gandhi, the then Prime Minister, too was assassinated. P.V. Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh led Indian National Congress Party government took over the destiny of people of Democratic Republic of India. Rao Singh government put their full faith in capitalization and hatred for Sarvodaya-based socialist society by announcing new path of capitalization called liberalization, privatization, globalization. The political the policies of education for all and health for all were abandoned, and policies of privatization of education and health were announced openly. Process of destruction of schools, colleges, and universities, public hospitals, public sector industries took central stage. Capitalization acquired new beautiful clothings of privatization, liberalization, and globalization. Contractualization, reform, reform soon it acquired a new beautiful and charming name, term Ram Mandir in place of Babri Masjid, Ram Ki Roti, computerization, digitalization, foreign direct investment, Make in India, International Yoga Divas, Vishwa Guru, etc. etc. Multinational business industries became new lords of agriculture in India. Labor intensive industries were sought to be replaced by capital intensive industry. A policy of creation of unemployment in government offices, universities, colleges, schools took center stage. Jobless growth became new mantra of India becoming superpower through high rate of GDP. Labor laws protecting labor were replaced by anti-labor laws by creating Chamakta Bharat, signing India. Reform provided charming cover to capitalization through the philosophy of destruction for construction. With passage of time and deepening corona pandemic led crisis, capitalization has acquired newer forms and methods. Corona pandemic created new opportunities for it. Prior to corona pandemic, capitalism has acquired new forms. Some of these were Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas, Achhe Din, Swachh Bharat, Kisan Fasal Bima Yojana, Ayushman Bharat, Ujjwal Yojana, etc. etc. It adopted monetization in place of privatization. During the corona pandemic, philosophy of Sarvodaya-based social society was replaced by the philosophy of Ram Raj and Ram Temple rooted in nudge theory. Ideals of Hinduism replaced the ideals of secular equality, freedom, and fraternity based democratic republic of India. 115 crores poor Indians, the sovereignty 115 lost the sovereignty rights over India, were sought to be taken away by making them refugee in their own country, having to no fundamental rights through Citizenship Amendment Act and National Population Register, as they were providing as they were proving a stumbling block to capitalization of Democratic Republic of India. Constitutional rights were sought to be replaced by constitutional duties in order to smoothing and accelerating the process of capitalization. Two questions may be asked here. One, what is capitalization? Two, when did capitalization begin? Though the answer to these questions is beyond the scope of this brief note, yet an attempt will be made to answer these questions very briefly. No single or a group of individuals has created land, forest, air, water. Therefore, no single individual or group of individuals has right to possess and be sovereign of land, forest, water, air, etc. Number two, no single individual can discover and develop science and technology through his, her mental and physical labor. Science and technology, therefore, is social, and because of which no one has a right to be its sole master. Capitalization is a process of acquiring sovereignty over land, forest, air, etc. by an individual or a group of individuals. It is also a process of taking possession of the wealth produced by collective mental and physical labor by depriving those who have produced it. Commodification, marketization, consumerism, etc., are central to capitalization. Ruthless appropriation and expropriations are its main methods. However, all these are disguised through new and attractive phrases as described above. Answer to the second question needs knowledge of history, of genesis of life, including human, history of agriculture, industry, science, technology, family, community, society, state, etc. To be precise, one needs to have comprehensive knowledge of history of science of nature, human society. This, of course, is beyond the reach of 99.5% of 7.5 billion world population. Capitalization thrives on ignorance is bliss and violence of all kinds, including major world wars. The same is beyond the scope of this note. What, however, is possible is a brief statement without elaboration. Capitalization began with agricultural revolution and continued growing during feudal social system, speeded up with बस ये बस यार ये 2 मिनट में नहीं होगा. Hmm. Capitalization began with agricultural revolution and continued growth during feudal social system, speeded up during and after first and second industrial revolution and scientific revolution, and now it has reached its zenith. In the process, state emerged as the most powerful weapon of capitalization. The high correlation between state and capitalization and high negative correlation between state and democracy do not seem to have been studied as yet, although one may find plenty of literature on the subject. Digital technology revolution has removed all roadblocks to capitalization. It shall soon devour all that is left out of its ambit. What one ought to note is that beginning of agriculture created surplus which it produced, which its producer could not have consumed in a single day. It attracted those who were not engaged in agriculture. Such people started plundering agricultural produce. It is this process of plunder that gave rise to capitalization, a new form of social formation in consonance with the needs of thieves, dacoits, who later acquire new roles of king, monopoly, corporate, welfare, democracy, etc. One can trace its origin in biology, which is known as social parasite. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It was very detailed presentation, and there's a lot of scope for research for others from this. There are several issues you have touched upon. As we are sort of through with the N4 presentations for this session, and also I think we have largely run out of time, partly because we started late. May I let me just maybe very quickly in just few lines. I do not want to summarize, but then the papers, the two papers, particularly Professor Vinod Shah and Professor Chobe, they really dealt with the political economy with a historical perspective and sort of very much highlighted the role of the private capital or neoliberalism as they suggested, and how the state has not been sort of able to respond to the need, the demands of the needy in the society. So that was one very interesting proposition they made, and whether the marketization of very many basic services actually, whether it has helped or not, is a concern that they have left with us. There are several other needs from that. And if you come to Dr. Oli Misra's presentation, that was also a very interesting presentation talking about what she called as the sustainable resilience of the social enterprises at the margin of the society and during a difficult phase of the pandemic. I think that also showed us that there is still a lot of hope, and maybe the apparently ordinary people with their sort of power to cooperate and so that they could really make or bring about major changes. And the presentation by Dr. Sajad also was suggesting that maybe his study would tell more about what kind of political determinants are influencing transfers of expenditure on health at the state level. But because the study is yet to begin, so let's wish him all luck. And with that, if I do not know whether there is enough time, but if there are
No, no, we don't
any
have,
quick
sir. Sir, we
questions,
don't have time. Sir, we
okay.
don't have.
So
We have already reached to the 5 and we have another public lecture by 5.
okay,
So,
so maybe I request Dr. Anuradha to please give the vote of thanks. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Yeah, Dr. Anuradha, please. Is Dr. Anuradha around?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please,
Once
kindly.
again, good evening to all. I'm Dr. Ritu Gangil, proposing vote of thanks on behalf of organizing committee. I would like to thank ISSA and management of BS Abdur Rahman for providing platform. I thank the participant for participating in the session. I would like place thanks on record for providing technical support, and thank you everyone for presenting and giving the time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much,
thank
all the
you.
participants and all those who listen to us. And because of time constraint, we will not be able to proceed any further. Thank you very much, and it was a great opportunity given by the Indian Social Science Academy. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, sir.
Thank you, Professor Das. Uh,
Yeah.
now, friends, now we are the today's evening public lecture.
Yes, sir.
May I request Professor Palani Durai to come over the dais and chair this session. The speaker of this public lecture is Sri S. Chatterjee, who will be speaking on scientific tempers and self-reliance, 75 years of India's independence. Dais is over to you. Sir, please. Yeah.
It's a public lecture. We have only few. So where they have gone? Because they are coming. Somebody has to mobilize. Is there any volunteer? Yeah, please. Yeah, please come. Yeah. Please. Oh. Yeah. 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 Wait for some time because it's only few. So public lecture without public. This is public. I'm delighted to be here and preside over this public lecture on a very important uh, topic, scientific temper and self-reliance, very heavy loaded word. 75 years of India's independence. I was a young lecturer. I went to Thiruvananthapuram. Professor K. N. Raj was taking a class in that institute. I peeped into the hall. Then he immediately invited me, please come, sit. It was a gathering of farmers. Then after the program was over, we came out. I asked K. N. Raj, what did you teach? He told me, research methodology. Are, he is a farmer. You are saying that you are teaching research methodology. Parinidhari, do you mean to say that your agriculture scientists are doing research, farmers are not doing research? Real researchers are only farmers. Then I picked up, something is there. Then when I joined in Annamalai University, I have a different habit. Because my mother is totally, uneducated. By a woman with enormous knowledge. She used to guide me. If you ask me, who is your best teacher? My mother is my best teacher. So I thought that, what is wrong in bringing self-help group women? I brought self-help group women in our campus. I taught Indian Constitution. My colleagues used to laugh at me. Professor, what you are doing? So what is the use of it? No, whether use is not there, just I want to experiment. Then it was over. So one day we went to a village to organize a program, and the person who is responsible for organizing the programs disappeared from the scene. But somehow or other, one lady came, sir, what you are looking for? This is a program we have to organize. Don't worry, I will do it. Within an hour, she mobilized people in the rural areas. Right. Then we had a chat. Sir, you educated us on Indian Constitution. Enormous powers Constitution has granted. We came to know that these are all our rights. Constitution has granted, but community is rejecting. What is to be done? This is a major problem. You tell us what is what is a way? What is a way out? This is the most important thing. I told her that don't worry, I will take another class for you. So why I am bringing this? Many of the occasions, we believe that, academics believe that knowledge is being created only in laboratory, knowledge is being created only in academics, but the knowledge is being created elsewhere. So that we have to accept it, number one. Number two, it's a country where violation is a culture. Adherence is not a culture. Whatever rule you enact, this is only for a book. You keep it. You can violate. If you violate, in a dominant place, that is not a violation. If ordinary people violates, it is a kind of violation. Immediately you book. So violation is a culture. And we talk about governance. This is a new word. Till 1991, it is equated with the government. But in 1991, it is Professor Manmohan Singh, introduced this concept in the budget itself. Then subsequently, all people have, used. Then if you browse the literature, brought out by the World Bank, you find enormous. Subsequently, the state has got the capacity to use all those languages. In the 75 years of governance, one part is a government, another part is governance, 30 years. And science. Many of the occasions, the day-to-day practices in the villages, if you look at it, community picked up practices from its ancestors. So what are all the practices which has got scientific value? We are not doing such a kind of research. Whatever is being practiced by the community, we outrightly rejected it. Whatever is being coming from the market, we accept that is a science. That is a science. This is the way. But in many of the villages, during pandemic, village panchayat presidents have given, only the Siddha, decoctions, which is being accepted by the people. Initially, it was not accepted by the government, but at a later stage, they accepted that these are all the Siddha medicines, these are all accepted. Later, Ayush come. So, in that context, the topic, I feel that it is more relevant. So, it's another thing, physics professor is looking at, it's not social scientist, he's a physics professor, he is looking at the whole practice of science, scientific temper, and the concept of self-reliance in the past, 75 years in this country. And with this, opening remark, request Professor Chatterjee to, deliver his lecture.
Thank you very much. And very often people ask, why, as an astrophysicist, you are talking of these things? My reply is very simple. Because I may be looking at stars, but I live on this earth. And I have to live amongst all of you, isn't it? Just as you are dependent on me, so am I dependent. So our society is interdependent, and in this respect, as the ISSA also declares, that science is social. And I would like to show you here some kind of a scientist-politician interaction. I won't call it a nexus. Nexus comes because of somebody seeking an advantage. I thought it is at one juncture during our freedom movement, it was really. So anyway, I feel more honored as more people come, because it is said that you cannot have Hamlet with neither Hamlet being absent nor Hamlet's father's ghost being absent. So I would say a public lecture without the public is a bit of a misnomer, but they are growing in number now. So therefore, science is social, and in this I would like to show that how the interaction at the time of independence took place. Now, this is the 75th year of independence celebrations. All kinds of celebrations are going on, but we have to recall certain things. Independence was not a gift. This is, we must recognize. And what is the level of sacrifice? We can't quantify those things. So therefore, I will give you, in the form of a bit of a pictorial storytelling. Rather, my paper is there already, but its contents I'm interspersing with little pictures. You will like it. तुम्हें बहुत पसंद आएगा. हाँ? So okay. So let me give you first picture, please. First, next slide. Shall I use? I'll tell you next slide. You please keep changing. No, otherwise I miss the sequence. Okay. I know. Sometimes I'll forget. Correct. Now this is also the 125th year of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's birth. But I will deal with certain aspects of Netaji's life in which he does not appear in military uniform. Today, why I want to do that, first of all, I want people to be reminded that Netaji in military uniform was the head of the military wing, but of a civilian government. His government in Singapore was a civilian government of which he was the commander-in-chief. It is a civilian government that which controlled the military, not the vice versa. And again, patriotism is not to be determined only by militarist attitude. I completely reject that idea. It is to live in peace. That is our primary objective. And I will deal with a large part or some part of Subhash Bose's life where he is not in military uniform. And let us look into that. Here you can see two pictures. One of them is Lakshmi Sehgal. You might have met Chaube Saab. Allahabad and Kanpur are very close by. Okay, I have also met her. And the other one, the man just with a little mustache, is a second in command, Shah Nawaz Khan. Okay, next one, please. Now, this is a picture of Netaji inaugurating what is called the Mahajati Shodon in Kolkata. It is not named anything after India. And Jati here is all people, all nationalities. Mahajati Shodon. Okay, he is at the inauguration, and the man there sitting here, is there a pointer, please? Or it is there in this itself? This red one, isn't it? This man is none other than Rabindranath Tagore, who was the chief guest there, and it is worth reading his speech. What he said at the Mahajati Shodon. Okay, this must have been 1939 or so. Must be after the Tripuri. Yeah, he was very ill at that time. He was very ill at that time, yes. Huh? Must be 39, after Subhash Bose had to leave Congress, maybe just after the Tripuri Congress. 41. He died in 41, but my uncle, my youngest mama, came as a youth volunteer here, carrying Rabindranath in a stretcher. In spite of his ill health, he wanted to come there, and then he gave his lecture. Mahajati Shodon. Okay, next one, please. Now, again, another thing. People are talking of these days, the place where you learn things is nowadays, I think, the WhatsApp University. Isn't it? But nothing can replace a book. And I would say, there's another book by Jayaprakash Narayan, which I've forgotten. One of them is Whither India, written in 1933 by Jawaharlal Nehru, and it is published by Kitab Mahal from Allahabad. Does the publication exist? नहीं, Discover वो बहुत बाद में है. अच्छा, Whither India, 1933, Kitab Mahal from Allahabad. This is Indian Struggle by Subhash Chandra Bose, 1935, and Discover of India, 1945 or 46, by Signet Press. This was written in jail. This was written from jail. And this began when he was recuperating. He went for treatment to Germany there, but later updated. But anyway, all these were in the periods in and out of jail. Next one, please. Now let us see what Nehru wrote in Whither India. And he said that India's struggle in the 1930s was a global part of a global struggle for emancipation of the oppressed. Now, I underlined it because today nobody talks of an oppressed, isn't it? Everyone has all the benefits. There are no oppressed in the world, correct? As if there's nobody oppressed in India. So I think this is a difference that we must say that in the dominant narrative. The narrative at that time was, yes, we are an oppressed people. And India today, we have come to believe there's nothing called oppressed. Yes? So this is one. Sorry, please, go. I'm sorry, I did it. Okay, fine. So here you can see emancipation of the oppressed. It is an economic struggle, and struggle against what? With hunger, want as its driving forces. India is still a land of hunger. Let there be no mistake about it. I may not be hungry, or no one in this audience is hungry, but it is a land of hunger. Let us not forget this. Okay. This is in Wither, India. Now, Subhash Bose, I won't go into the Indian struggle. Huge amounts can be given from there. He became the president in the Haripura Congress, and this is his part of his presidential address. Regarding the reconstruction of a principal problem will be how to eradicate poverty. Mind you, poverty, again, poverty from the country. That will require a radical reform of our land system. I think in the last discussion on economics, etc., question of, you said it, agriculture and the structural conditions of the land rights, land system, including abolition of landlordism. Now, land reforms have come, but I don't think landlordism has vanished. You may not own land, but you own something else. Okay? This is it is unseen, I would say, an unseen landlordism that is going on. And he said, and here also some debate may come, and it came in the morning, that is it industrialization alone? Of course, at that time, this was not a question. That you have to, sorry. So a new industrial system will have to be built up in place of the old one, which has collapsed. India was a deindustrialized country as a result of mass production abroad, result of capitalism, and alien rule at home, which put tariff that you had to buy all the way from there. Next one, yeah, I'll come. And in a remarkable work was done in 1938 when Subhash Bose was the president of the Congress, and that was the formation of the National Planning Committee within. Mind you, even before country was independent, a planning committee was formed. And in that planning committee, here is a meeting of the planning committee going on, and this is Subhash Bose standing. Maybe he's addressing something, and next to him is the chairman of the planning committee, that was Jawaharlal Nehru. You can see Acharya Kripalani, and you can see Sir M. Vishweshwaraya. The man who is turbaned is M. Vishweshwaraya, and right at the back is sitting Meghnad Saha, the famous physicist. Famous physicist Meghnad Saha sits there. Rather, he was a prime mover of the planning committee. It was Meghnad Saha. Okay. So, and in fact, the idea was initially to have Sir M. Vishweshwaraya as the chairperson, but Meghnad Saha said the planning committee has its political strength, and without the support of the Congress party, it becomes only paper. And he suggested the name of Jawaharlal Nehru. Not only that, he convinced Vishweshwaraya that he should step down in favor of Jawaharlal Nehru, and Jawaharlal Nehru accepted. Now, what was the reaction of all this? I will give reaction of, okay, what Bose had said. The objective of the Congress is an independent, united India where no class or group or a majority or minority may exploit to its own advantage. This is the Congress president stating in 1938. You can judge how far we have progressed or we have retrogression step. It is for me to place before you the visions. In 75 years, Haripura and scientific community was growing, and it was at that time mainly centered in Kolkata. This picture shows all of them in their traditional Bengali dress. You can see all of them. This is J.C. Bose here. This is S.N. Bose, Satyendranath Bose, M.N. Saha, J.C. Ghosh, J. Mukherjee, and all them. All these are contemporaries of N.R. Dhar. N.R. Dhar was their senior. Okay. N.R. Dhar was a chemist, and all of them were trained by J.C. Bose and his colleague P.C. Ray. They're all their students. So this was the scientific community was very small, but all of them had some form or other participation in the Swadeshi movement, Bonga Bhanga Andolan of Bengal. Like Meghnad Saha was expelled from school because of participation, And because of that expulsion, he never could get that record, he could never get a government job. So finally, he had to take a job as lecturer. It was loss of the British government, was a gain for Indian science. So he became a scientist at the University College of Science and next moved to his city, that is Allahabad, and came back to Kolkata again. So this is, again, so here is an excerpt from an interview that Bose gave to Meghnad Saha in Science and Culture in 1938 itself. And Bose was asked, what is your idea of industrialization? He said, we can, sorry, he said, we can at best determine whether this revolution, that is industrialization, will be a comparatively gradual one, as in Great Britain. As you know, Great Britain started with James Watt's uh, steam engine and progressed over a century, or a forced march as in Soviet Russia. I've underlined. And Bose's reply says, I'm afraid it has to be a forced march in this country. And this forced march you cannot do without planning your science, technology, and development. This was the sum total of the aim. Now let us see whom it had inspired. Many large sections of people, and one such person who was inspired by this idea was this man, Rabindranath Tagore himself, okay, poet who got. And Nehru and Tagore had a great relationship between them because both of them believed in the plurality of Indian culture and its compositeness. This was the elementary point, and you can see to Bose's, to Nehru's autobiography, he had written, Dear Jawaharlal, I have just finished reading your great book and I'm intensely impressed and proud of your accomplishment, achievements, etc., etc. And Bose writes, and he writes to one letter to Nehru that, my dear Jawaharlal, the other day I have had a long and interesting discussion with, let me not be so partial, let me now point on this. Long and interesting discussion with Dr. Meghnad Saha about scientific planning for Indian industry. I'm convinced about its importance, and as you have consented to act as the president of the committee formed at Subhash for the guidance of the Congress, I would like to know your views on the matter. The letter continues and so on. And one of the people who was his secretary, he writes later to my dear Panditji, Gurudev has written to you today, more or less a reply to your letter to me. He has been rather captivated by Dr. Shaha's ideas of international, misspelled, I think, rational planning, and he is hoping much from the committee. He also wants a modernist to be the Congress president for the next year, so that the report, when finished, would be warmly accepted by the All India Congress. In his opinion, in the opinion of all of us too, there are only two genuine modernists in the High Command, and they are you and Subhash. Okay. This is Anil Chandor, he writes. So these were the two modernists, according to them, but the modernists actually fell apart. They could not remain together for long, and we do not have to go into the history of that. But I do not believe, there's no evidence to show that it was Nehru all the time trying to obliterate Subhash Bose. There is no evidence of that. It is only political propaganda. There's no evidence of that. In fact, in bunch of old letters, he has printed Bose's letters to Nehru, where Bose is accusing Nehru that you could have done this, you could have done this, you did not do it. Bose's brother Sharad Bose accusing, and those are all printed by, authorized by Nehru to be printed. So I don't believe in any of those conspiracy theories. Okay, next one, please. So Nehru on the planning committee, I would not go much, but one or two I must read. To base our export markets, to base economy on export markets, might lead to conflicts with other nations and to sudden upsets when those markets are close to us. Suppose you said we'll grow by export, and if they stop your imports, what will happen? Or if that economy collapses, what will happen? So don't take the risk. So what should you do instead? He said there should be state-owned construction of industries, and these are owned and controlled by the state. Regarding other key industries, this is, for example, defense. It should be completely owned by the states. Majority were of the opinion that there should be state-owned, but substantial minority of the committee consider that state control will be sufficient. That is, most of it should be state-owned, but there can be some private sector also. This was the essential opinion within this planning committee. Okay, so such control of these industries, however, has to be rigid. Public utilities, it was also decided, would be owned by some organ of the state, either the central government, provincial government, or the group. Essentially, it has to be state owned. There is no escape from that. And so these are the certain details, but let us see one thing. This is important. And I think this was being discussed a little while ago, that agricultural land, mines, quarries, rivers, and forests are form of national wealth, ownership of which must vest absolutely in the people of India collectively. Not government of India, people of India. And the government has to be a true representative of the people. You know, this is a question which we have to see on the 75th year of independence. Let's proceed then. Scientists, again, were very much enthused by the question of planning, and this partly because of planning in the Soviet Union. Now, planning in the Soviet Union was not uniform. I've gone through some of the reports. It is not that someday somebody decided, and whole nation decided, okay, let's go and do that. Let us build the steel mills. No, nothing of that kind. There were tremendous debates were there, objections, and so on. But finally, they did it. And the great scientists you can see here, J.D. Bernal, famous for science and history. This is Frédéric Joliot-Curie, his wife, Irene Curie, his son-in-law and daughter of Madame Curie. Both were Nobel laureates. About Bernal, it is he could have won 6 Nobels at least. And this is Mohanlanobish, who finally did the real statistical and mathematical work for the planning. After 1942, nothing moved because all these leaders went to jail. Their chance again came only after independence. After the constitution was formed, planning committee was formed. So now we will take a little jump. We won't go year by year. We have concentrated everything now, till now, in the year 1930. We take a jump by a few years, and let us see, this is after independence, Mohanlanobish, this is Mohanlanobish, and this is Nehru, they are discussing. And what was it? And it is called the Mohanlanobish two-sector model. And what are the two sectors? The population was divided into agriculture and industry. But it was understood that two are interdependent. As we say, everything that we eat has to come from agriculture. Okay, that's most elementary thing. But not only that, even sugarcane has to be grown by agriculture, which finally goes to industry. Am I right? Okay. So this is the interdependent and industry. An industrial product has to be used by the agriculture. I need not elaborate. Two are independent, and in both of them, there was the stored. So I have not written the mathematical equation. I don't want to bore you with all these things. There were two parameters, alpha and beta parameter, which would determine whether economy is going to grow or economy is going to decline. And the statisticians and mathematicians, they evaluated those. And anyway, main ideas: industrialize India, modernize our agriculture, income to be doubled in 10 years, keep inequalities low. Again, this is very important, and we know we have not succeeded in that. Inequalities have grown and astronomically grown. Okay, this has to be kept in mind, and enforce import substitution, because there was very hardly any foreign exchange. Foreign exchange has to be conserved, so enforce import substitution, and that has to be done by the state-owned industries. So steps, and the first indications were, of course, in the Karachi Comngress Resolution 31. As I said, state-owned public sector, expand public-funded education, public-funded higher and technical education, and improve life expectancy. In 1932, it was 1947. in 32 years was 1947, and now our life expectancy is 69. Literacy was 17% in 1947, and now it is 74%. Okay. But again, the definition of literacy essentially remains the same. Whether you can recognize the alphabets, recognize the numbers. Very elementary level, but nevertheless, even with this elementary level, it was very low in independence time. It's okay. So what were the happenings? There were river valley projects, IITs, IIMs. I'm using first 25 years, and there's a reason why I'm doing it. CSIR labs established in 1942 with 80 scientists. In 2030, there were 38 labs, and only one opened after 2002. Agricultural university with extension centers, green revolution, etc. You may criticize the green revolution, but whatever it is, capability of doing the R&D with agriculture had it. That cannot be doubted. Next one, space research. And here, in this, the three principal figures, this is Sarabhai, anyone recognizes? This is Satish Dhawan, who was the director of IIC and also the head of the space director when I was a student in IIC. And this is Indira Gandhi, who was finally responsible for opening a new department for the Department of Space. Earlier Department of Space was India. It was part of the government. This is, you can see here. I don't know where it is. I think it is in the National College campus of Bangalore. Here you find another very important figure, U.R. Rao of space. I would say after Satish Dhawan, the person who contributed most was U.R. Rao. Anyway, let's go ahead. This is 1972. Targets for the first 5-year plan was agriculture. These are all the figures, right? But you can see how low it was. Just 2,378 crores was the expenditure, but it has crossed its thing. It was 2.1% was the GDP growth target, but it achieved 3.6%. Anyway, so you can see roughly these targets were maintained in the second one, but third one it suddenly collapsed. Where the target was 5.6% growth, but it became 2.4% growth. So while earlier it was satisfactory, third plan suddenly collapsed. And there are reasons for that. One of them is there were two wars, 1962 and 65, and there were, and of course, Green Revolution was therefore pushed and so on, good or bad. It was done, and it is shown that in the hospital. And these were some of the institution builders in science, Homi Bhabha and J.C. Ghosh. C.V. Rahman, all you know, these were really two great institution builders. Expansion of IIC in the period 1930 to 48 was because of this man. Again, a student of P.C. Ray and J.C. Bose. There were several policy documents, industrial policy 1948. Most important was scientific policy resolution of 1958, which was authored by Homi Bhabha. Yes, please, can you hear? Yeah, because I have the, yes. I want to be a bit dynamic, you know. So anyway, Scientific Policy Resolution of 1958. It was authored by Homi Bhabha, passed by the Indian Parliament. Next was Technology Policy Resolution 1938. But I would say after that there was a gap. Many resolutions, but really, if anything, qualitatively different had come. I would say, again, you should say a watershed year is 2014. Okay. Others were a continuation of what we had understood earlier, but watershed year, I would say, let's, yes. And what has happened? Only two documents I will place before you. New education policy, of which a lot of discussion has taken place, even in our earlier congresses it has taken. But I will quote a bit from this one, Science, Technology and Innovation Policy 2020. And you will see the difference. So this is where I go. The two things have happened after 2014. The planning commission has been scrapped. It is not there anymore. Okay? And again, the people who eulogize Subhash Bose, they have scrapped Netaji's brainchild. Okay? So you can do two things at the same time. Yeah? This I think called the Dvaitavada in philosophy. Yes, okay. Huh? Dvaitavada, okay. This is the Dvaitavada. You can practice. And now I think UGC will be scrapped very soon. It has not yet been done. It will be done. From 2016, all the, bills have been created. UGC will be, so everything will be this kind of institution. Okay, next please. What has happened is something called Make in India. What do you want to do? Make India a global manufacturing hub to facilitate investment, foster innovation, enhance skill, etc., etc. Fine. But global manufacturing hub of whom? Whose global manufacturing hub? Yeah? Yeah. There are two people are easily identifiable, but that's never answered. Facilitate investment, okay, great. It has to be invested. Without investment, there is no science. But it recognized it has to have these pillars. New process, which recognizes ease of doing business. New infrastructure to build what? Industrial corridors and smart cities. Entry into new sectors and a new mindset. Now I'll come to the new mindset. What is the new mindset? And the new mindset has to be contrasted with the 1938 document, in which the government will partner industry to economic development of the country. The approach will be that of a facilitator and not a regulator. So something that is missing in the entire document is the ease of doing science and the government as a facilitator for the ease of doing science. It is never mentioned in the STIP document. I'm carrying it with me. So anyway, so all these things are here. And only a contrast with China has to be given. People all say that Chinese exports, but again, reality is China is dependent on 35% of its GDP on export, where India is 48%, which means China is actually less dependent on exports. Much of it is internal. And anyway, India is essentially an exporter to China of iron ore, cotton, and other raw materials, and it imports. India has imported large quantities of electrical and mechanical machinery, active pharmaceutical gradients, auto components, etc., which means essentially even PPEs, which means essentially that India is still a raw material exporting country where they have a skilled things. Anyway, this is their investment in science and technology is actually close to 18 times higher than India. In real terms, their GDP invest per GDP is 2.5%, close to 2.5, but not exactly still. And India is between 0.6 to 0.7%, but in real terms, China is about 18 times more investment in science and technology as such. So anyway, so as I said, theirs is $37.8 billion, India's is $2 billion. You can take the ratio. Okay, it's about 16 to 17 times. Go ahead, please. So anyway, whatever is being said is this. It is not a question of, it is foreign MNCs play an integral role in India, boosting India's economy. This has to be the new mindset that has come in this document very openly. And so we have to have things like international and scientific, whenever desirable, India will play an agenda setting role, etc. We will set the agenda, but we are dependent on MNCs. You have to decide whether it is possible. This is a question, but I'm giving you the phenomena and phenomena are from their own document, from the government's own documents. So one thing very astounding. What is the role of science? Science and technology for diplomatic benefits. Do we ever do science for diplomacy? And the other thing is diplomacy for science. Diplomacy, do you learn first diplomacy, then do science? Or first learn science, then do diplomacy? How do the match? Ask our foreign secretary whether he is trained enough. And diplomacy for whom? What kind of science will he do for diplomacy with Bangladesh? Or with Bhutan, or China, or Nepal, Afghanistan, or Sri Lanka? I've left out Pakistan because there cannot be any diplomacy. Or China, there cannot be any. But even with these countries, how will you use your science? So anyway, so this is it will go on. Anyway, it is there in my paper. Chinese are going to increase, and they are going to increase to 15% in fundamental research. Yesterday, in the opening talk, it was saying we should do more applied research. Now, this has to be debated. Without fundamental research, my proposition, there can be no applied research. That itself is flawed. Any idea that saying do applied research, you will be only copying. Fine. And they want to put 15% of their S&T investment in fundamental research. My point is that this is self-reliance, but it came hand in hand, scientific temper at the time of it was something today, our Prime Minister gives Jai Vigyan, Jai Anusandhan, very good, very good. But can it be followed with the help of the STIP document which I have quoted? Go ahead and, yes, and this expansion of education, real education I'm talking, not education for jobs, and not education for setting up, what is it called? Nowadays, you are telling startups. Startups you open, but how many they are closed down? Is there any statistics? So, inspirations have been by the real reformers, Raja Ram Mohan, Vidyasagar, Jyotiba Phule, Fatima Sheikh, and all these people. Make fruits of science accessible and affordable. This is what people say. That hydroelectric power in backward Russia had brought these changes, socio-cultural changes. And this lamp, first electrification, is called Illich lamp, because this is named after Lenin. How much time do you have? 5 minutes more? I'll finish in 5 minutes, because after that you have got your meeting, isn't it? Yeah, this is the famous Dnieper Dam. When they wanted electrification, there's the famous Dnieper Dam, and here is a peasantry, they're holding a lamp, and they called it Illich lamp. They associated electrification with the name of Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov, which is name of Lenin. And this is what is happening in Tashkent. That picture is taken from Tashkent. Same thing, Pilaya Dam site, I visited. And I was surprised that it started just after our independence. And this is a picture, it did not come out very well. This man in the Gandhi cap is Nehru visiting that site. Okay. And this was one of the dreams of, again, a physicist, Meghnad Saha. And here I would say Meghnad Saha because he is a scientist, but a dissenter. Bhabha was not a dissenter. He had his own, but it aligned with Nehru's ideas. But Saha was different. And here it is. He has won the election as a opposition candidate, independent, supported by the leftists from Calcutta. He was a member of the Lok Sabha, not Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha you can nominate it. You campaign. And he used to have clashes with his own student, K.D. Malavya, whom he had taught in Allahabad University. Okay? Though Malavya himself was a proponent of industrialization, but it did not satisfy him. He did not satisfy the Guru. कहते हैं ना, Guru तो गुड़ ही रह गए और चेला बन गए शक्कर. This is reverse. Okay. So anyway, this goes on. In higher education, we require the following: improve quality, make it accessible. Don't say that It is a service. It is not a service. You are making money. How is it a service? Isn't it? You are making money. Do you make money and say that I'm done your service? Don't call those things. This is all borrowed from the, you are saying, get agree, Dunkel draft, isn't it? All these terms are borrowed from there. Yes, make it affordable. Why are people rushing? Because without that, there's no job. And people think, get one more degree, I'm going to beat so and so. Okay? With one more degree, he has got one less degree and so and so. Yeah. Now I will tell the following. I was there in the 43rd ISSC. Invited speech was very respected scientist. We were taught by him also a few courses. Ruddam Narasimha, he was there. He said, considerable progress has been done in our India. Let us not deny that progress has been done. Many people say nothing has been done. It is absolutely false. Something has been done, but let us not underestimate ourselves. In the 1970s, aerospace in China was behind us. Now they are way ahead of us, as if a revolution would take place. We do not lag in individual talent. Our system does not recognize, nurture, support, and manage. System needs a change. And this change has to come in the system. This is a quote from Meghnad Saha's in Lok Sabha, that we did not have the capability at that time. People say you could have done so many things, but where was the capability? He praises Nehru for setting up the national laboratories. Yes, I must give Prime Minister the credit, but he also says that as a matter of fact, there is no engineering research in the country. 1950, hardly any Indian, and from there, you say you build these things. It is absolutely impossible. So this is, you can see the difference. This was the way a rocket used to be carried in the 1960s, early 60s, and this is one of the centers only. So who says there has been no progress? But when it comes to self-reliance, when it comes to scientific temper, this is how Ganesh, don't equate it with as a evidence of plastic surgery. Okay. If it was possible in those days, it must be possible today. But why is nobody trying? Because I think there are two risks everyone knows. An elephant has to lose the head, and a human being has to lose the head. Am I right? And everyone knows that these two risks are too great, so don't try these things. Tell that we believe this as a story. For example, this is a production of Macbeth. Here is Macbeth, 3 witches. Nobody believes that witches came. We know it is a story, it is a fantasy. Treat a fantasy as a fantasy. Don't say it is an evidence. Mythology is no science, and theology is no philosophy. This is what people do use sometimes at certain ends. Tilak used the Ganesh Chaturthi to unite Brahmins and non-Brahmins. In Bengal, the Durga Puja by the revolutionaries, because that's the only way you could escape the sedition law. Sedition law does not apply there. Okay, and you can see there are certain people who are in the Muslim uniforms also in a Durga Puja. Okay, so this was a gathering. Sometimes these are social things, but in social things you try to be Swadeshi also. This is an old advertisement, and in Bengali we don't say Videshi, we say Bideshi. So there here also it is written Videshi. Give up that and come here, that is Swadeshi. Yes. Nehru says there is no visible limit to the advance of science if it is given the chance to advance. It is the scientific approach, the adventurous and yet critical temper of science, the search for truth and knowledge, the refusal to accept anything without testing and trial, the capacity to change the previous conclusions in the face of new evidence. This is scientific temper. And this is what Kosambi says, science is the cognition of necessity, freedom is the recognition of necessity. Science is a history of science. Without knowing history of science, you cannot understand science. And finally, he says, scientific temper is the temper of a free man. Who is a free man? Yesterday he was saying that we got independence but not freedom. Isn't it? That's what was being said. We have to judge those things. Anti-superstition laws are coming. These are very important. And there are people who challenge, and people have given lives for that. And in support of National Scientific Temper, we are observing the National Scientific Temper Day with the slogan, Ask Why. And finally, icons of Gandhi, Bhagat Singh, Bose, and Ambedkar, these have to be revived in the pro. This is Gandhi's talisman. Recall the face of the poorest and the helpless man whom you have seen and ask yourself if the step you contemplate is going to be of any use to him. And Ambedkar also says same thing, that we are getting a democratic constitution on the one hand, but contradictions are still going to remain in the social sphere. These are things which are Swami Vivekananda talks that every Indian has to consider each other as a man. That is, say, the ignorant Indian, the poor Indian, the Brahmin Indian, and the Chandala Indian are my brothers. These are not done. This is what a preamble of a constitution has given. Subramanya Bharati says something similar. Beat, O drum, to proclaim victory in all directions. To all the world, let this message sound. Fools are they who speak of several gods and kindle fires of hate. The one soul being among all being, the one single life in all that lives, that and alone is God. Sound drum, the message of unity, proclaim, flourish is love, proclaim. Similar tune, Kuvempu in Karnataka says, at birth, every child is a world citizen. Let us not forget that. This is on plurality of India. Tagore, I love India not because I cultivate the idolatry of geography, not because I had the chance to be born in a soil, but because she has saved through tumultuous ages the living words that have issued from the illuminated consciousness of her great ones. This is the idea of India. And I end with a very famous poem where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. So this is the India that we aspire to have, and thank you very much.
It's a inspiring talk. Uh, what I can do, because tea is ready, then we have to have our general council. We don't have a time excepting to thank the speaker, public speaker. One thing he reminded by bringing the quotations from Vivekananda, then Gandhi, Ambedkar. So behave responsibly. We have to behave responsibly with a sense of justice and responsible citizen. No, because it's 6 o'clock. Tea is ready. We have to have a tea within 5 minutes. Then we can reassemble here. And profusely, I express my deep sense of gratitude to the lecture given by Dr. Mukherjee and the office bearers of ISA. Thank you. Okay. No question because it says.
No. That's time. Yeah. No. We have to GBM. So we have to. Yeah. I think this is the success. This is the success of this public lecture, that everyone is provoked and wants some kind of observation, comments, or something. Thank you very much for being with us. Before we leave this dais, we want to felicitate our public speaker. Please.
I heard very small time, but it is very inspiring. Thank you very much. I would like to chairman to do it. No, you are the elected chairman now, president. Sorry, so please do it. So we all be there. Secretary will be there. Fine. Thank you, sir.
we all will agree that it was a very good public lecture, and we all did not see when that 1 hour went. It was very rhythmic, smooth, and we were sailed to a musical train, and then we reached to the end of this. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much to be with us, and thank to chairman for chairing this particular session. We have 5 minutes, a small break for a tea, for a cup of tea outside, and then we'll reassemble here for the GBM. Thank you.
ठीक।
Is can anybody can help in bringing some people from outside to the hall? Here only members are allowed, life fellows and members. Non-members can go out. This is general body meeting meant only for life members and members, council members. Students and all, there is no entertainment here. Students can go out who are not members. Annual member, okay, fine. Annual member, life member is fine. Who are not life member and annual member can please leave this hall. No. Why you want to have cultural program here or what? No. It will be more entertaining. So I don't want to have a public entertainment. The clearly members and life members.